titled this, Pick Up the Damn Phone. I was having a conversation yesterday with a girlfriend. It was quite entertaining. We had gone back and forth on text messages probably about 5 or 6 times. And in fact, I've noticed this trend over the last few years where we really spend a lot of time texting each other, which is great, fantastic, very easy to like, hey, I'm already here at the theater. I'm just parking. I'm on my way. It's really great for that sort of like quick little info bites that you might need in order to connect up with someone as you're heading in a particular direction. Yet what we were discussing yesterday was at about the 5 or 6 text moments that we had, I just picked up the phone. It's like, let's just have a conversation really quickly. And we were laughing because she goes, nobody does that anymore. And I was laughing going, I do, because at some point I'm done texting and I'd rather just have the conversation with another person. And when you think about the fact that in our culture at large, we have an epidemic of loneliness. People are more connected and yet still less connected in many ways with other people. There's a depth to conversation that is fairly impossible to have at a text level, which isn't to say there aren't occasions in the odd conversation where you get into something really deep in a text conversation that's also meaningful for both people, yet that richness rarely shows up in the same way when we're just texting or messaging or emailing each other. And when you think about the fact that 85% of our communication is nonverbal, what is lost in these strategies of LOL, LMOA, or LMAO, whatever the little acronym is that we're using to express ourselves? Whereas when we picked up the phone, she and I started laughing and we're having a conversation and we're sharing a moment, and the nonverbal communication is showing up in the tone of voice. It's showing up in the desire to even have a phone conversation with somebody. We're talking at a much deeper level about the topic, which in this particular case was just about getting together, and like if I would show up and she needed to go to the doctors and when we would meet and blah, 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 right? It wasn't even that it was the most important conversation we were ever going to have. It was that it allowed us this opportunity to just have some fun together in that moment, and literally only took 5 minutes. It wasn't like it took a tremendous amount of time longer. One of the things she pointed out is she has many friends who would prefer to have a 1 to 2 hour texting conversation because they can go away and come back and go away and come back. And I ask you, I'm really very curious, what shows up for you when you are having a conversation with somebody, they write something on a text message, you respond, you walk away for half an hour to do the dishes or to stir the soup on the stove or wash your dog or do something else, and then you come back and now you're back into that conversation. Are you in the same frame of mind that you were half an hour ago? Or do you even care half an hour later? You may, depending on what the topic is. If you're making plans for going to a concert or out to dinner, it might not be an issue at all. But if what you're doing is wanting to have a deeper connection with a person, what's served by this in and out conversational style of texting? And I love texting. So this is nothing about don't text, don't message, like do it all the time whenever you feel like it. And yet there's these opportunities that we miss where we could really have a deeper, more thoughtful conversation with another human being. Share a giggle, share a laugh, share a tone of voice, share interest with each other in different ways that just don't easily show up in the way that we communicate through text messaging. And I want to go back to this idea of 85% of communication is nonverbal. One of the things I often hear, especially when I'm working with people who use email a lot, especially in business, and they have a difficult conversation they need to have. And the ways that we are thinking, like our intention in the way that we're typing out something, whether we're writing an email, whether we're texting a message, can be lost on the receiver. And so what ends up happening is we may even be creating through our nonverbals or our non-nonverbals, because we're not giving any in our writing, a very different message than what we intended. In fact, I had a difficult email I needed to write just earlier this week, and I sat with it for probably about 24 hours because I was looking at how different ways I was saying something might be taken. And I wanted to make sure I cleaned all that out so that it was really more of an invitation of let's have a deeper conversation later, without setting up something where the other person might already be feeling defensive about it, because that wasn't the point, nor was that my intention. And it also isn't the kind of conversation I wanted to walk into. So, nor did I want to blindside them with a conversation that they didn't even know might be coming up. So how do we begin to be very mindful about how we're connecting with people, and what would be the value for you when you're thinking about your own connections, the things that you want? I see somebody wrote something in the chat box and I can't read it. So let me see here. Yeah, sharing a giggle and a tone. Love this opportunity to truly connect. Absolutely. And that's it, right? Like, you're watching this video and you can hear my tone of voice, you can see my facial expressions, but even if your eyes are closed or you can't see me and you're just listening to this, you know, as your phone is over there, there's a sense of you have an idea of what my energy is like. You can, and we read energy in other people all the time. We can tell when somebody's speaking to us and they're highly frustrated. We can tell when they're really upset. We watch things, John Gottman's work, I love John Gottman's work, and one of the things that he found in relationships, and I'm talking in the big picture of relationships, is that contempt is something that we communicate non-verbally all the time. If you've ever dealt with well, honestly, if you've ever dealt with another human being, you've probably experienced something that looks a little like this. You say something and the response that you get looks a little bit like this. Right. Now, the person has said right. That could go any number of ways, depending on how we say it. You're right, right? That's one way of saying you're right. Going like this, right, is not the same right. I mean, these are two very different rights. If I'm writing right in an email, you may get the impression that I'm in agreement with you. But if you saw my face while I was writing right, you may realize I'm not in agreement with you at all. And in fact, that's the face of contempt. It shows up a lot. And it often is something that we see. We especially notice it with teenagers when we're a parent, you know, and we see this, or an adult who's dealing with a teenager and not a parent, and that face comes up and we're like, don't roll your eyes at me, right? That's and we see it in our spouses, we see it in our direct reports, we see it in our coworkers, but it's that sense of whatever you just said, I'm not on board with it. And what we tend to do is get reactive to it. And an invitation might be to get curious, like, whoa, I just saw what just happened there, because I thought we were on, you know, in alignment, but apparently we're not. Let's have a conversation about that. What's coming up for you about this? So that what we're doing is, from this place of curiosity, creating connection. And I guess I need to probably bring this to a close because I've been going on a little bit too long. Yet, I think that this sense of how do we want to be in relationship with ourselves? How do we want to be in relationship with all the people around us? And if you're going to be in a place of wanting to have connections with other people, why not really connect? So put down the damn phone and pick up the damn phone and call somebody when you're in a long texting messaging session, and just enjoy a real conversation with somebody, and the giggle and the tone and the energy that shows up when you're actually having a conversation. All right, enough said. Have a great day and cheers.